can't just be a product. It can't be one SKU on the shelf without meaning. It's got to be a full movement.
A couple of years ago, if you were to offer someone a non-alcoholic beer, you'd be met with judgment, weird looks, or outright dismissal. Bill Shufelt changed that. In 2015, the hedge fund pro set out on a mission to create a non-alcoholic beer that tastes like, well, beer, while simultaneously creating a product that taps into a growing health-conscious society. Today, Athletic Brewing is the #1 non-alcoholic beer brand and has changed how people drink. Here's how Bill Shufelt made non-alcoholic beer buzzworthy. So I want to just start with you starting this company. When you decided to launch this business, non-alcoholic beer was not a thing, really. I mean, it was something like 0.3% of the market. What made you think this was something that was actually worth investing in?
I stopped drinking about 10 years ago for personal health and lifestyle reasons. And I started to look around and realize, wow, 99% of people are not drinking most of the time they're awake. And there was a big opportunity there to give people premium options across all sorts of occasions.
Did you have any concerns that this was a business that major national companies had decided not to go all in on?
For established companies, people in companies, there's not a huge incentive to take risk on things that have uncertain outcomes. And people want defined outcomes to invest in and work towards, or defined markets, I mean. And this was very much undefined and uncertain. But I'll tell you what wasn't uncertain was my knowledge and my gut that this is an enormous unmet need. And anyone I talked to out there, echoed that back to me. Even people who drank a ton, people who didn't drink at all, it was people from all different careers. I heard it over and over again. But in terms of good, cautious advice I ever got was that it is really hard to go against big incumbents in well-established regulatory industries where there's an incredible amount of friction. And so that's kind of what I had to solve for in a big way was how do I go against those big incumbents with the regulatory structures in place already to protect them.
All right, well, let's talk about that. How do you do it?
One of my things in business planning was it can't just be a product. It can't be one SKU on the shelf without meaning. It's got to be a full movement. It's got to have depth in everything we're doing and have an incredibly passionate group of people delivering on every element of the company. And so our investment wasn't just in getting an MVP and getting it out the door. It was, I found an incredibly talented brewer in John Walker, who's our co-founder. He had won every award under the sun in the alcohol side of brewing. So we went super deep on product innovation and investment in new product. Branding and marketing we went very deep on and were really intentional about. But then also things like employee handbook, culture, mission statement, charitable and sustainability. And
you were building all of this with John before you had employees or a real company?
The nice thing is about homebrewing in an empty warehouse with someone you barely know for 9 months, we had a lot of time to talk about what's important in the company. What do we want the mission to be? What do we want the culture to be? What do we want the handbook to be? And I still walk through the employee handbook with every single person who starts in our company. I think getting people really excited about the North Star and the culture and the team environment we're building allows us to really decentralize power to everyone and empower them in a way.
How do you find a co-founder? How did you get him to a yes, I want to join you?
I probably did hundreds of conversations before finding John. And I talked to so many people that when I found John, I knew it was just an amazing individual, co-founder. I basically started the conversation with John, please don't hang up. If you give me 5 minutes, I think I can convey passion and excitement for this idea. And he was like, okay, you got it. And I was like, and also please don't say no till Monday. Think about it over the weekend and at least give me a few days to say no. And credit to him, he was one of the only people who didn't say no just immediately. And he thought about it over the weekend and came back. He was immediately I was going to say no. But then I thought about it. I think this is genius, and I'm so excited about it. We met once in person, and he picked up and moved his family across the country to Connecticut, and we started homebrewing in an empty warehouse together.
Let's talk about this movement idea. It's a really interesting one. Is you weren't just selling non-alcoholic beer, you were trying to start a movement. Because you weren't just creating a product, you actually had to build a market at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about how you made a buzz?
Everything was new and interesting except non-alcoholic beer. Hadn't innovated in 30 years.
Right.
And so there was no one walking in and looking at that section. I knew if I could convey why I'm so excited about this and shared a little bit of that fire, that I could make an army of 1,000 true fans. And they would then tell thousands of people and it would build on itself. but I had to get people to the moment I was at. That first summer on the market, I signed up to sponsor 70 athletic events. Most of it was just emailing race directors, asking if I could show up for free with a cooler and hand out hundreds of beers at the finish line of their race. And just that 1 or 2 minute interaction where I could put a beer in someone's hand, talk to them about like why we are just making non-alcoholic beer great and tasty. And people would go away with a beer, and we would get hundreds of emails back in of people being like, I had no intention of stopping drinking. I'm a total accidental quitter, but I've noticed all these changes in my life. Or, I love beer. I'm not giving up my Friday night beer, but all of a sudden I can drink beer 7 nights a week and feel great about it. It's a pretty high bar to feel. You have to reach out to a company and express an emotion. Right. And so that's when I knew that we had a real groundswell of people who really got what we were doing.
Non-alcoholic beer is finally having its moment. In the U.S., sales at restaurants and bars jumped 13% last year. That's outpacing the overall market's 3% growth. At stores, sales have nearly tripled since 2019. At Whole Foods, it outsold all other beer brands, even those with alcohol. You got into Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how that happened?
Whole Foods is an enormous grocery store, and it's amazing that they're still that in tune with their local roots. I just walked into a local Whole Foods, and the forager, I had a brown bottle, no branding whatsoever, and she tasted it, and she was like, oh my. She's like, we've seen no innovation in this part.
Let me back up for 1 second. You just walk in, you've got some liquid in a brown bottle, and you find someone whose title is the forager, and you just hand her the bottle and she takes it?
Yep.
You didn't know, you never met her, there was no warm intro, this was a pure cold call on her.
Yeah. And she was like, this is incredible. And she immediately was like, you've got to get to the regional office. And she made this connection to regional, and I got to go into the office next week. And they basically said, we've been waiting for this. Like, this is such an uninnovative category. And they gave us a chance in Connecticut. And then as soon as we opened new states of distribution, Whole Foods took us really far and really fast.
I want to go back to this idea of one person helping you crack through get into one of the most important distribution centers that you can get into. Is there any lesson from that?
This is a concept I've grabbed from both like Mark Andreessen and Sahil Bloom, is kind of increasing your luck surface area. And I think Mark Andreessen said, luck's not going to knock on the door while you're watching Netflix and come in and present you a menu of options. It's when you get out in the world and put yourself at risk and talk to people. And I've always been someone who says yes to a lot of things, someone who's out there on the road, talking to people in person and trying to increase that luck surface area. A lot of people sit in an office and try to scale an idea these days. And there are a lot of softwares and tools that can help scale ideas and stuff. However, those tools and softwares are available to everyone. So like the moat behind you is not that deep. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge believer of getting out there in the world, talking to your community face to face, creating natural connection.
At this point, you're now a mid-sized, fast-growing company. Is it important to you that your employees embody some of these same ideas that you had in the early days? What kind of culture are you trying to create around this luck surface or around making a movement?
Trying to encourage a lot of the principles and effort and passion that we've always had. Taking risks, taking innovation, not blaming people or like looking for blame when things fail. Like risks and tests are really encouraged, and then empowering them. Athletic wants to be one of those places where people work for 10 plus years and like are super proud of what they've worked on over that time, that it's financially rewarding, but also like fulfilling for other reasons. I have come from a financially rewarding but not fulfilling job, and it was a pretty empty, very tough existence. Work is about a third of our waking life, but it can be 50+% of your waking thoughts, and we want that to be something people are so excited about and fulfilled by and feel good about.
I'd love to ask about career advice. What do you tell people when they say, I've got something I'm passionate about, I want to go start my own business? What kind of advice do you give people?
So my main advice is making sure you're passionate about it to go through the tough times and the valleys. And like valleys come almost every day. But like if you're really truly passionate about something or excited about it or like meeting a need for consumers that's authentic, like those valleys you'll run right through.
And what kind of advice do you give to someone who does not want to be an entrepreneur? And of that person who maybe is looking to spend 10 years at your company, what's your advice to them when they're starting?
So there is something great about just collecting a salary and the consistency and the stability. I think it's making sure you love what you do and you're fulfilled by what you do and you like the people you're working with, and being picky about that, because as we talked about, it is 50+% of your emotional energy and thinking goes into your career. Making sure you get with the right team and something you're really excited to tell people you're working on.
Here's what stood out to me. The word passion can get tossed around lightly, but in the right hands, it's a game changer for a business. For Bill, the passion was what made him leave his job, but it was more than that. The passion turned skeptics into believers, from his co-founder who bought into his dream, to investors who backed the man behind the product, all the way to the consumer who now reaches for an athletic rather than the usual suspects. It's clear that passion in the right hands can change not just a business, but an entire industry. Listen to my full conversation with Bill Shufelt on the This Is Working podcast. And tell me, does your passion transform the way you work? Let me know in the comments.